Bruchim haboim, welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Mem Vav Amud Beis, the very bottom, the last line. After the Gemara has told us that there is various opportunities and requirements to mechabed somebody else, for example, by Mayim Rishonim, you give it to the Gadol, the one who is of greatest stature, who is most learned. You also give the Mayim Achronim to the one who is most learned, the Gadol Beinehem. Our Gemara now brings other things that a person should mechabed and those who should not mechabed. Says the Gemara, Tonu Rabbanon, Ein mechabdin, loy bidrochim, v'lo b'geshorim, v'loy b'yadayim mezuhamos. Here the Brisa tells us we shall not mechabed. It's not the place to mechabed people on the drochim. Either refers to the traveling inside the city itself, which would cause traffic, other people who are trying to then come and go, and it'll hold them up, or it's referring to between cities, whereby a person is in a rush, and thereby it wouldn't be a kavod to then try to give him to go before, rather he'll be misacher, and thereby it's not derech eretz to mechabed on the drochim. Also when it comes to geshorim, a gesher, on the bridge is a dangerous place, and therefore it's not a place to mechabed somebody else to have him go before you. And thirdly, it says over here, lo b'yadayim mezuhamos, not when it comes to a person's hands being dirty at the end of the su'udah. It's not a place to mechabed and say, why don't you clean your hands? We said before that the gadol beinehem is the one you give mayim achronim first to, and if it's the last of the 5, and there's more than 5, you give him first out of the last 5. There it's because you want to mechabed the gadol to say birkas hamozon, and therefore it's a kavod to him. But if it's just in order to say, wash your hands, that itself is not a kavod. Says the Gemara, Ravin ve'Abai havu ka'azli ba'orcha. They were traveling on the road together. They met each other in the middle of the road. Kadme chamre de Ravin le de Abai. Ravin allowed his chamor, his donkey, to then come in front of Abaye. And he didn't say, let Abaye, you go in front of me. Omar Abaye said, when the Rabbanon come from the west, Eretz Yisrael, to hear Bavel, so they are gas daite. That means that they are coarse. When they came and arrived to the Beis HaKnesses, so then Ravin said to Abaye, may you go first, please. Until now, Abaye says, I was not mar. I wasn't called a master. I wasn't given respect. Only now, when it comes to entering the shul, you say I should go in front of you. Ravin said, this is what Rabbi Yochanan said, Ein mechabdin ela bepesach, sheish ba mezuzah. These ba mezuzah in, the less ba mezuzah lo. When are you supposed to mechabed somebody else? When you are walking together? That's before you enter a doorway. But not a doorway. If it doesn't have a mezuzah, then not. And therefore we're traveling on the road. It's not appropriate to then mechabed somebody else to go in front. Since a Beis HaKnesses and Beis HaMedrash do not require a mezuzah on the doorpost, thereby you should not come to mechabed me either. You must say Pesach haroy lemezuzah. No, the intention of Rabbi Yochanan was that when a person's entering a doorway that can potentially be put a mezuzah, that's when one should mechabed somebody else. Omer Rav Yehuda bereid Rav Shmuel bar Shilas mishmei de Rav ein hamesubin rashoin leechol klum ad sheyitoim habotzeya. Here the Gemara brings another brisa in regards to hilchos derech eretz, and when a person is botzeya and he's motzi everybody else, and is using his own kikar lechem, so he gives a piece to everybody else, it would not be derech eretz for those who are at the table to then eat before the one who's botzeya and mevarich first. Yossi Rav Safra v'ka'amar litoim. Rav Safra sat up and he said litoim itmar. He said litom instead of le'echol. Lamai nafka mino. What's the difference if the ones who are present cannot eat or they cannot taste the bread? Shechayev adam loimer b'lashon rabbi. The nafkamina is that a person should say a teaching over in the same language as his own Rebbe. The Gemara goes on, explaining other halachos of derech eretz at the Seuda. Ton Rabbanon, Shnayim mamtinin zelazeh beka'aro. If there are two people who are eating from the same bowl, then they should wait for one another. If one is going to then go ahead and take a drink, he should wait. When the other person is finishing to drink, then they can go ahead and partake again in that ka'aro. Shloisha ein mamtinin. If there's three, he doesn't have to wait. Habotzeya, says the Brisa, who poishe yodo techila. The one who's botzeya, the one who is moitzi others with his bracha, then he is to take first. However, if he's the balabayis, and therefore he was botzeya, we said he's the one who's to mevarech and botzeya because he'll give ba'ayin yafeh, a large piece of bread to each of those who are present. He can, however, give the first portions to the one who's gadol mimenu or his rabbi. Rabbi Bar Chana have a osik le librei be Rav Shmuel bar Rav Ketina. Rabbi Bar Chana was oisek in a shidduch with the house of Rav Shmuel bar Rav Ketina. Kodim v'yosiv v'kamasni le librei. He went and he sat and taught the following halacha to his son, the Chasin. He knows he's going to be a balabais and it's going to be relevant for him to lead the Seuda. So he said to him the following: Ein ha-botzea rashoy livtzoya ad sheyichla omein mipia oinin. A botzea, the one who's being moitzi others, cannot be botzea, cannot break the bread until he hears everybody answering omein first. Since omein is part of the bracha, and thereby you need the bracha to be completed before you break the bread while it's still sholem. Thereby, you have to wait until everybody answers Amen, which is part of the bracha. Rav Chizda Amar mi pi roiv ha'oinim. You don't have to wait for everybody to say Amen, as long as it's roiv of the oinim. Omar le Rami bar Chamo, maishna rubo da akati loi kalya. Just the reason is because by rov, because they didn't all complete answering Amen, then brach lokalia brocha, miutanami lokalia brocha. Even if it's just a minimum, a miut, they also did not finish the bracha. And therefore, if you have to wait till they finish the bracha, then wait for everybody, not just the rov. Omar le shani oimer kola oina omein yoiser midai eino ela toye. A person who answers amen too long, that means he stresses the amen so it's not clearly enunciated, then he's making a mistake. And therefore, all I have to do is hear Rov answering amen before then being boitseya. The Gemara now brings a brisa in regards to answering amen. Tonu rabbanon ein oinin loy amen chatufa. A person should not answer an amen that is chatufa. In other words, amen has to be made clearly, and therefore has to be enunciated correctly. And if he says amen with a chatufa means that he doesn't allow the aleph to be sounded with a kometz, but rather with a shva. And therefore he says amen, without saying amen. V'loi amen ketufa, he also doesn't enunciate the nun at the end. He says amen, without answering amen. V'loi amen yesoima. Yesoima could be explained as two different ways. He doesn't answer amen toich kedei dibur of the bracha. He waits too long to answer amen, so it's disconnected from the bracha. Or yesoim can also mean that he doesn't know what bracha he's answering to. So even if he doesn't hear the bracha, but he knows the bracha that he's answering to, like it says in Alexandria in Mitzrayim, the Gemara tells us that when it was such a large place that not everybody heard the bracha, but they would wave a sudar indicating the end of the bracha, and everybody would answer amen, because they knew what bracha they were coming to answer for. That's okay. But not to know what bracha you're answering amen is a problem. That's called an amen yesoimo. The Brisa continues, V'lo yizroik bracha mipiv. A person shouldn't throw out a bracha from his mouth. Rather, he should say it properly and say, maybe with every few words is a great eitzah. Instead of saying, Baruch Hashem Malkeinu Mechalam, quickly, Hamoitzi Lechem Min Haaretz, Baruch Atah Hashem, stopping after every 3 or 4 words. Elokeinu Melech HaOlam. hamotzi lechem mina oretz. And the ikar of the bracha is to know to whom you are thanking and on what you are coming to say thank you for before you begin the bracha. Ben Azai Omer, the Brisa continues, Kol ha'oine omein yesoima, you bonav yesoimim, mida keneged mida. Chatufa yischatfu yomov. Ketifa yiskatfu yomov. However, on the other hand, Kol ha'marich ba'omein, marichin lo yomov v'shnoisov. All who are lengthening, not saying it too long so it's not clearly enunciated, but rather saying it in a clear fashion, and they're marich in that way, then the schar is that they also mida keneged mida will get arichus yomim v'shnoisov. And since Amen is part of the bracha, and the bracha comes from the Makar HaBracha, Akash Baruch Hu is the source of the bracha, and he's the source of the Chaim, he's Makar HaChaim. Thereby, if a person says a bracha properly, and he says Amen, in this case, he answers Amen properly, which is part of that bracha, then Mida Keneged Mida, he'll be Zechet to Arichus Yamim Vishanim from the Makar HaChaim. Says the Gemara, Rav Shmuel Hava Yasvi B'Su'udasa. Rav and Shmuel were sitting and eating together. After they finished, also Rav Simi Bar Chia Hava K'Mesari V'Ochil. Rav Simi Bar Chia joined them, and he began eating quickly in order to then quicken his pace to make a zimun together with them. Omar le Rav, Rav said to him, "My daitich litztrufe bahadon, an nachil nalon. You want to mitzaref us with us to make a zimun? We already finished our meal." Omar le Shmuel, ilu maisili ardilya, if they would bring me a dessert of mushrooms, which he liked very much, v'gozalia le'aba, and they would bring goizolos, which is the dessert that Rav liked very much. Shmuel used to call Rav by the title of Abba as a term of endearment, out of respect to Rav. He would call him Abba. So if somebody would bring us a dessert, even after we finished eating, miloi achlinan, will we not still eat? In other words, so long as we have the potential to still eat, we're considered to be part of the Suda, and we can mitzvah with somebody else who is just joining us now. Until a person either washes his hands, mayim achronim, or he says, havlon v'nivrich, let us bless, meaning let us say birkas hamazon, then he can still eat, whereby he can still make the zim with somebody who's coming late. Says the Gemara, Talmidei de Rav Havu Yasbe B'Su'udasa, the students of Rav were eating together. All Rav Acha came subsequently. Amrei, also Gavra Rabba de Mivrichlon. They wanted to give Rav Acha, who was a Gavra Rabba, who was a Gadol, to make the Birkas Hamazon, to make the Zimun. Omar Lehu, he said to them, the Talmidim of Rav, Misavrisu, the Gadol Mevarich. Who's to say that the Gadol is to Mevarich? Is that what you think? The one who is Iker in the Suda, and since I didn't begin with you, I'm not the Iker in the Suda, and somebody else should make the Bracha. The Hilchas, however, the halach is not like that. The halach is Gadol Mevarich Afagab the Asal Levisoif. The Gadol is the one who makes the Bracha, he makes the Zimun, even though he came late. Now the Gemara quotes our Mishnah. We had a list of various things that we might think cannot mitzaref for the zimun. Kamash Malan, we're told otherwise from the Mishnah that indeed these are things that can, yes, are mechayev in the zimun. One of the things that's listed, the first one is ochel demai, if they ate demai. We said again, demai meant two words, a contraction of da mai. This, what is it? In other words, this is tvur that comes from an am ha'aretz, and since an ami ha'aretz are not careful in being mafrish maisrois, therefore, when a person acquires such grain or fruit from an am ha'aretz, thereby, out of safek, he is to then meiser those fruits and those grains. Says the Gemara, holo chazile, behold, the grain that he ate with for this bread is not chazi, is not fitting, since it's demai, so how come he can be mitzaref for the zimun? Says the Gemara, kiven di boy mafkir lehu lenechase v'have ani v'chazile. Since if he wanted to, he could go ahead and mafkir all of his property, all of his nechosim, whereby he'll become an ani. And an ani is permitted to eat demai. This is not like it says in the Mishnah. Ma'achilin es ha'anim demai. Ves ha'chasanya demai. We feed anim demai as well as achsanya. Achsanya are those chayolim, those soldiers who are also considered to be anim because they're now situated in your city and they have nothing to eat. So therefore, the halacha is that although it's demai, since demai anyways is a suffix, because roiv amei haaretz do meiser, so over here we're making when it comes to an ani, and therefore he can mafkir his nechas and become an ani, thereby he's permitted to eat demai and make a zimun. Vam Rav Huna Tana, and Rav Huna said, Beis Shammai ein machlin es ha'anim v'sachsanya demai. Beis Shammai says that we do not feed anim and achsanya demai, and this is brought to then tell us that if in other places we see such a halacha, it's a name Beis Shammai, and to know that this is not the halacha. The halacha is like Beis Hillel, that anim we do feed demai. Maiser rishon shenot letrumosoi. The next in the list is that somebody, referring to over here, the Levi, who took his maiser, it says over here, he also took truma and gave it to the kohen. Frek the Gemara, pshita. If that's so, that's obvious. That of course then he can be included in the zimun. Says the Gemara, lo tzricha ela sheikdimu b'shibolim v'hifish menu trumas maiser. Here we're talking about again, the Levi took out the grain, his maiser, and then he took out trumas maiser. And the chiddush is that even though it wasn't in order, in other words, even though that the truma gedola was supposed to be given out to the kohen before the Levi took his meiser and gave his trumas meiser to the kohen, and that wasn't done. It's true that the Levi took his meiser and he gave truma from his meiser to the kohen, but the truma gedola, the initial amount before the Levi is supposed to come along, is supposed to be given to the kohen, and that wasn't done. V'lo hifish men truma gedola. Ki Rabbi Abo d'Amar Rabbi Abohu. Amar Reish Lakish, Meiser Rishon shehigdimu b'shibolim poter mitruma gedola. If indeed Meiser Rishon was taken before there was a chiyuv in truma gedola, so thereby it's poter from truma gedola, even though he didn't do it in order and he now loses out for the kohen to get that truma gedola, it's still going to be considered to be poter mitruma gedola. Shneimah, this is v'harimoisim imenu trumas Hashem meiser mina meiser. The pasuk says that he takes trumas Hashem meiser mina meiser, teaching us meiser mina meiser. Amarti lacha v'lo truma gedola trumas meiser mina meiser. That which the Levi takes from his meiser truma gedola, trumas meiser, that's trumas meiser, not truma gedola with that trumas meiser. Omar le Rapapo le Abayi. Papa says now to Abayi, if so, afilu higdimu b'krinami. Even if the Levi were to take his grain, his meiser, when there was a kri, that means that there was already it was the end of the threshing, and the balasode put a pile of grain and smooth that pile out. So then also we should say, perhaps says Rapapa, that even though there was no truma gedola given to the kohen gadol, to the kohen, but since the Levi took out his meiser and took out truma from his meiser, that should be okay too. Omar lei aloch omar kro. Abai answers him, you have to explain the pasuk. It says bekom meiser oseichem, and then it goes on to say tsharimu mara is hai idgon v'hai lo idgon. The difference is that which it says that you should then give your truma, referring to now truma gedola, that's when it's a dagon, and when it is made into a pile, that's called now the gancha. It's called your dagon, and the dagon now makes it so that it becomes chayiv to give to the kohen. He has the reshus to come first. If that's not done, and rather Levi comes first, preceding the kohen from taking his truma gedola, then it's no good, and that's usur.